Hello, everybody. Good evening. And it is time to talk healing, health, and wellness. This is the Light Clinic, and I am Dr. Debbie Bedoui here to talk to you. And tonight is going to be very interesting. We are going to stick with our last week's discussion about what we take into our bodies, what we put into our bodies, because what we eat is really important. And I'm going to stay on this for a little while because it's so important and there's so much information that is peddled by leading organizations, government agencies, etc., that are simply just not what is best for us. And my job is to empower you. And tonight, what I want to talk about just for a little bit, and as you know, the power of three, we talk about Ayurveda medicine, energy medicine, and herbal medicine. Now, tonight, I'm taking a little bit of a uh, detour to add to Ayurveda medicine because it's not necessarily a component of Ayurveda medicine, but what is how it does connect is the idea of what we put in our bodies is important. It's probably the first big major important step in turning around your healing, health, and wellness. And as you know, I always talk about the body, the mind, the soul, and the spirit, and you cannot leave out one and not address one and expect optimal healing, health, and wellness to occur. You have to address all components of ourselves. So tonight, the little detour we're going to take is based upon the work from Dr. William Davis and his book Wheat Belly. I hope everybody can see that. It's kind of backwards and upside down, but hey, it's called Wheat Belly and it's by Dr. William Davis. And just to give you a little bit of a recap, I will read just the back of his book because I might as well just use his words instead of my own in a summary because it says it so much better. The groundbreaking book that kickstarted the grain-free movement revised and expanded with the latest nutritional and scientific research findings. Of course, as you know, I am very big on merging ancient practices and medicine with current scientifically research based methodologies for the modern world. So, merging the ancient world with the modern world. First published in 2011, Wheat Belly introduced the world to the hidden dangers of modern wheat and gluten, revolutionizing the conversation around health and weight loss forever. Nearly a decade later, Dr. William Davis's provocative indictment of the dominant staple of our diet continues to inspire countless people to lose the wheat. After witnessing thousands of patients regain their health after giving up wheat, Davis reached the disturbing conclusion that wheat is the single largest contributor to the nationwide obesity epidemic, and its elimination is key to dramatic weight loss and optimal health. In this number one New York Times bestseller, Dr. Davis provides readers with a user-friendly step-by-step plan to navigate a new wheat-free lifestyle. Now updated with refreshed recipes, new program guidelines, and cutting-edge nutritional findings, Wheat Belly is an illuminating look at what truly is making Americans sick and an action plan to clear our plates of this harmful ingredient. Now, that says a lot, and I'm going to be honest with you. When I first uh, fell upon this in my journey, most people who know me well, they know that I don't like to go all the way left or all the way right. I like to be somewhere in between in the middle. I like balance. I like harmony. I like things not to be extreme. So when I first heard about this and when I first looked into this, I was like, that's a little extreme. Because, like most of us, my first reaction was, so what do you eat? As if there's nothing to eat if you don't eat wheat or grains, right? Which is so not true. But that was my first reaction. So for all of you who may be, well, this is a little extreme and what am I going to eat then? Never fear, just hear me out a little bit. And I will not do this great book justice just in the few minutes that we will spend together tonight, but I will give you an idea. And I am wheat and grain free. I don't eat wheat and grains by my choice. Now, do I say that everybody must do this? I don't tell anybody they must do anything. You have to be knowledgeable, educated, and make your own decisions. I am here to give you the information, to talk to you about my experiences and the experiences of some of my clients, because some of my clients have gone wheat and grain free, and share the science and you know, the experts in this realm, some of their experiences or some of what they are saying. But this book, I recommend it to everybody. Dr. William Davis, Wheat Belly. And basically, what he says is that there's more. First of all, everybody knows about being gluten free. So, one thing I want to say about that is that the problem with wheat is much more than just the gluten that is in it. And secondly, what I want to say about the gluten issue is that when you eat gluten-free products, they are processed. That's all processed. So if I go back to Ayurveda medicine and eating clean and green and eating items that are the way that God made them for us, okay, the way they are so that you can identify a potato as a potato or a carrot as a carrot, um, that matches uh, that Ayurvedic perspective and eating clean and green. That any processed food, no matter what it is not the best for us. Now, can you be 100% uh, processed food free? Maybe not. However, if you can be as much processed free food, that is the best, getting as close to, or if not to 100%. So the gluten free issue, there's more to this than just the gluten. That's number one. And number two is that, remember, even gluten free products are processed. So they're not clean and green, and they likely and surely have things in them that are not good for us. So they're not the best choice. So, and remember, that's a whole market. I won't even get into too much about the economic side, but that's a whole booming market that the industry is making billions of dollars off from. And quite honestly, it's not the best way to go because it's not clean food. It's not clean and green. It's not clean the way it has things in it. A lot of gluten-free products are high in sugar, and sugar is a whole nother issue we'll talk about another day. But let's get back to Wheat Belly. And I want to share something with you from here. And first, I'm going to start out with the current dietary advice that we get from all of the leading agencies, government officials, FDA, whomever, all of them, whomever they may be, and nutritionists. And I'm not saying nutritionists don't do good work, but they go by the latest guidelines. And what Dr. William Davis says is conventional dietary advice should be something that we kind of run away from. We should wrinkle our nose at it as if it's got a bad smell like rotten milk. Um, and he says, blessed by food manufacturers, extolled by dietitians, positioned on the most visible eye level shelves in the grocery stores, wheat is elevated to the top of the list of foods to include in every meal by most doctors. And now what they say is they say whole grains. So whole grains are supposed to be all great and good for us, right? Consensus dietary opinion has gotten us into a heap of trouble, creating an epidemic of bulging bellies and a market for insulin injections and toxic drugs designed to address the autoimmune conditions of people who waddle, limp, or ride scooters in double X large pants and dresses. The situation is unprecedented in human history. And that is so true. I mean, if we look around, most people today, including children, are obese. Many people in their midlife come to find and experience that they cannot lose weight. For example, suddenly they gain weight, they can't lose it. Of course, first, that might be, we change as we age, but nevertheless, if you look back in the 1950s, 1960s, and you look back at all the pictures, there were 30 and 40-year-old women and men, and most of them, a majority of them, were thin. You rarely saw an obese person. And my advice is ask why. Why is that? So then he goes on to say, um, he says, with all of this new information, he quotes Einstein and he says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. After doctors admonished them for gaining weight, experiencing high blood sugars, and feeling awful while following a diet low in fat and rich in healthy grains, because fat used to be, the evil criminal of all things. You need to try harder. That people would be told they have to try harder. They have to exercise more. They have to do more things. They have to be more active. They have to starve themselves more, or whatever. So people continued this and they continue it today, but we continue to do the same things, expecting different results when that is the ultimate definition of insanity. And if you look around with all of the asthma in children, with all the autoimmune diseases, with all of the skin related diseases, with all of the heart disease, with all of kidney problems, cancers, all of the health problems that we are facing today, I encourage you, simply ask why. Go on a search and just keep the question in your mind. Why? So, what is so just to make my point before I go further, today obesity has been democratized. Everybody can have a big belly. Your dad called his rudimentary mid 20th century equivalent a beer belly. But what are soccer moms, kids, and 2/3 of your friends and neighbors who don't drink beer doing with a beer belly? So if you sit and people watch, and I do that quite often, you're going to notice that even thin people have a bulging or bloated belly. And it's usually higher up. It's not like the lower belly. Oftentimes it starts higher up. So for women, it would be under the breast area. For men, under the chest area, for example. And you'll notice that there's a bulge. It's almost like it's swollen. In children, and I work with children every single day. In children, it's the same thing. So before, back in the day, it would be called the beer belly. Now, why is it that children have a belly that looks like a beer belly? Um, Dr. William Davis calls it the wheat belly, though he says I could have just as easily called this condition pretzel brain or bagel bowel or biscuit face, since there's not an organ system unaffected by wheat. There's not an organ system in the body not affected by wheat. But wheat's impact on the waistline is its most visible and defining characteristic, an outward expression of the grotesque distortions humans experience with the consumption of this grain. A wheat belly represents the accumulations of the fat that results from years of consuming foods that trigger insulin, the hormone of fat storage. While some people store fat in their buttocks and thighs, most people collect ungainly fat around the middle. This central or visceral fat is unique. Unlike fat in other body areas, it provokes inflammatory phenomena. So, what he's saying is that wheat provokes insulin resistance, basically. And then you accumulate fat, usually in the midsection. And it's not just fat like extra fat or extra weight. It's visceral fat, which is the most difficult type of fat to get rid of, and it's fat that's also deep within and surrounding your organs. So yes, you can see it outside, right? But you can't see it inside unless you go get certain imaging done. But visceral fat is the most difficult type of fat to get rid of, and then you accompany that with insulin resistance, and there you go. Very, very difficult to lose weight. And then your hormones go off. Your hormones are already off. And trying to lose weight under those conditions is difficult. Now, let's go one step further. What about if you're not trying to lose weight, you just want to feel better? Well, if you have this attacking your system basically and building up in your system, how is your liver going to function? How's your pancreas going to function? How are your intestines going to function? Not at optimal level. And when things are not functioning within the human body at optimal level, guess what? Things accumulate and collect. Not only fat, toxins, things that make us sick. So there is something behind this. And the thing about wheat is this, guys, and I'm going to give you a very simplistic explanation. And if you want deeper, more specific information, I suggest you get this book. But basically, wheat is not the wheat from back in ancient times. And even then, there is an issue with it because wheat is a grass. And may I ask, are human beings designed to eat grass? And all of us, of course, know, no, we are not. So if something is classified as a grass, even if it is, you know, manufactured, changed, the whatever people can do to it, it still began and is classified as a grass. That's problem number one. Problem number two is then throughout history, and I think it was back in maybe the 1970s, don't quote me on the exact date, but there was a time when the whole world was afraid of starvation, that we would have so many people in the world that we wouldn't have enough crops and enough food to feed everybody. We couldn't produce it quickly enough. And there was all these experiments done. And one person, and I don't recall his name, but one person won a Nobel Prize, and he's like the father of what I'm speaking of. He basically found a way to take the wheat plant and change it. So, and it's not only genetically modified, it's crossbreeding. So, crossbreeding it with other plants, and then came out with this variation of wheat that is now, over time, the wheat that we know today. Wheat, way back when, was very tall, and people would lose their crops because of wind, rain, etc. So they created, or they crossbred, uh, uh, grass, or the wheat plant, with other plants, types of grasses probably. And what happened was they came out with dwarf wheat. And that is basically what we have today. Now, at the same time that they did that, they also had to crossbreed it more so that it would not be able to it would be able to resist the plant would be able to resist pests. So then it that created all of that created so many more chromosomes and so many more different uh parts of the plant, that the original wheat plant is not didn't even exist anymore. And that has come to the wheat that we have today across the world, that's used everywhere, basically. So if you talk, there was a big thing long ago, and it still is a big thing, about GMOs, genetically modified. Well, if we have a problem with genetically modified, let's use our logical brains. If we have a problem with genetically modified foods, what about a food that has been crossbred different ways, different times, and now is not even what it started out being? Don't we think that perhaps that might make something that we weren't designed to even eat to begin with even more difficult for us to eat? So, the bottom line, and he describes the science in all of the scientific technical terms in his book, but the bottom line is he also says that there is not, from the brain all the way down to your toes, there is not one part of your body that's not affected. So when we talk about brain fog, when we talk about, our sluggishness, our slow thinking, our forgetfulness, can it be related? When we talk about our digestive issues, especially celiac disease and other intestinal illnesses and diseases, what about those? Wheat, specifically, I believe the gluten in the wheat, but the wheat in general, makes the intestines permeable over time. This doesn't happen, in by eating one piece of bread. But if you eat wheat your entire life, it accumulates. Everything accumulates. So our intestines were not designed to be permeable. So then when they become permeable, guess where all that stuff goes? All the toxins, all the waste that's supposed to be eliminated ends up seeping into our gut and moving through our system. And people who have trouble with celiac disease and other digestive disorders, such as that, irritable bowel syndrome and all of that, um, we really need to think about that. And not only that, even if we don't have those diseases, many, many people have digestive disorders, acid reflux. All of the digestive disorders that we are facing today that have become common is telling us that we are eating something that our body is not designed to digest. So the question is, when will we listen? And I have a challenge for all of you. Do 6 to 8 weeks completely wheat and grain free, eating uh, clean and green, the way that God made food. And I'm not saying go vegetarian. I'm not vegetarian, but eat high quality, organic, grass-fed, free-range chicken or beef or whatever meat that you eat. And but make sure that everything is as clean and green as possible. 6 to 8 weeks, completely wheat and grain free. Keep a journal. Keep a journal and note the differences. I'm going to tell you, and I'll share with you, that at my workplace, I'm a head of school. I started a wheat and grain free group, and it started out with maybe 3, 4 people, and it's grown into 10. And every single person, I told them, just try it for 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, and see if you notice a difference. See what happens. And 10 people did. All 10 people noted the following: my skin is better. I don't have the rashes that I had before. It's not red. My skin is more glowing. Even some of my wrinkles don't look as bad as they did before. My brain fog is either diminished or completely gone. I'm more clear-minded. The third thing, elimination, much, much better. Regular and no issues regarding that. Energy levels. The first 3, 4, 5 days was hard for some people, but once they made it through that, and if you make it through that, and when you make it through that, if you decide to try this, your energy levels will go up. So it's only difficult for the first 3 or 4 days, maybe a week. So everybody reported energy levels up. People in the group who had experienced chronic, not chronic pain, but pain in joints and problems with their feet and walking and aches and pains, either minimized or gone. So inflammation, and Dr. William Davis talks about this in his book, talks about inflammation and how that is either decreased or completely gone. So I know for myself, I had aches and pains everywhere. And when I changed my eating at the beginning, when I wasn't wheat and grain free, yes, it improved tremendously just by trying to eat clean and green. But when I stopped wheat and grains, one last problem that I had disappeared completely and it's never returned. So, there is something behind this, guys. So, once again, tonight we were talking about wheat and grain free, Dr. William Davis wheat belly, and let's see, there was one, let me see, there was something I thought about sharing. So I was talking about different diseases and different things that my group that I started experienced positive results. But Dr. William Davis notes about he has a various list of things. Just as an example, dermatitis, liver disease, autoimmune diseases, insulin-dependent diabetes, neurological impairments, nutritional deficiencies. And he says that the list could go on and on and on and on. He talks a lot about celiac disease. He talks about, and makes kind of a sarcastic little joke about, the Surgeon General puts warnings on certain things. Wheat consumption needs a warning. So yeah, this book is a life changer. Here's one example in the book, Wheat Belly success story, Keone. I have a huge list of health issues and ailments that are completely gone or mostly gone. These conditions are plantar fasciitis, stuffy sinuses while lying down that required some type of sinus medication every night, sleep apnea, benign lump under my right tricep, now 90% dissolved, skin tags disappeared, strange small scabs on the back of my head disappeared along with other skin irritations. No longer obese, less brain fog, and improved mental clarity. Persistent mucus and phlegm are gone. Let me say something about the mucus and phlegm, and I'm going to share something that I know just personally. As many of you know, on my whole journey to healing health and wellness started with me being at 300 pounds, and I simply wanted to lose weight. And when I started, I lost about 100 pounds, give or take, myself on my own. And then I got to the point, and I was ranging from like 195 to 210, somewhere around there. And I kept fluctuating and I couldn't get below that 195 for some reason. And then I kind of went up close to the 210 and kind of stayed there. And finally, I decided that I needed to do something aggressive. So I did the bariatric sleeve surgery so that I could uh, finish what I was doing and get to where I knew I should be weight wise. And yes, that was an aggressive move, but it's the best decision I made. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, or I'm not really promoting that. I'm just saying that it worked for me at the end because I was getting tired of the gym twice a day. I couldn't get past that wall, and I just needed to I needed a big change, a big intervention, and that's what I decided to do. So when I did that, anybody who's had bariatric surgery, what happens is it change you have to change drastically how you eat, what you eat, and the amount, and that you eat slowly, you chew your food, etc. And one thing that happens often with bariatric patients is that post surgery, if you eat something that's a little high in fat, and I don't mean right after surgery, you're not even on solid food, but once you get past that and you're on solid food, if you eat something that's a little, if it's a little high in fat, or uh, you eat too fast and then you're full too fast. What happens to many people, and it happened to me, is you end up getting sick, you end up vomiting, but you don't vomit food, you vomit mucus. It's like a slimy mucus. It's so gross. And I, in addition to so then I realized my reaction to high fatty foods, for example, and eating too fast or too much, I realized that it was creating mucus in my body. I didn't think too much of it at that moment, but I noted it. And then I noticed that when I eat, my nose would run and I would feel like my head was clogging up. And part of that has to do with there's a nerve that runs down the back, down the back of your stomach, a main nerve. And if you get full, it presses on that nerve. It can, depending on the placement of whatever the results of the surgery are. And then it creates kind of like an alert. You feel like you're having sort of like an allergic reaction, not anaphylaxis or anything, but just like an allergic. Your nose runs, you're feeling all congested all of a sudden. And once again, the congestion, where's it coming from? Mucus. So then I went on this tirade of all, this whole thing about mucus. And when we don't eat right, we don't eat the right amounts. We eat too much. We eat too fast. We eat toxic foods. Excuse me. We eat toxic foods. It not only accumulates toxins in our body, but it creates a response. The body's trying to fight whatever is not supposed to be there. So then you get things like the skin rashes, the accumulation of mucus, et cetera, et cetera. So then, after knowing all of that, then when I went wheat and grain free, I noticed that when I get a cold, and I have a little bit of a cold now, when I get a cold, I don't have as much mucus. I may be a little stuffy because I am a little stuffy tonight. I may have a little bit of a cough and a little bit of phlegm or mucus might come up once in a while, but nothing like what used to happen when I would get sick or when I would have the reaction when I ate something. Nothing like that. So I notice that the amount of phlegm or mucus that my body produces is a lot less in times when I'm either struggling with some sort of cold or illness, or I don't eat properly. And after going wheat and grain free is when I connected the two and put it together. So once again, Dr. William Davis, Wheat Belly. If you want the complete scientific breakdown, get his book and read it for yourself. But there's a lot to this. And I suggest that if you want to try it, go wheat and grain free for 6 to 8 weeks and just note the difference. And it's not as hard as you think it's going to be. All 10 people in my little group, um, they got very creative and found different recipes and foods. It can be done. There's plenty of food out there that is not that does not have wheat and grain in it. So that's all for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and make sure you join me next week. Remember, the Light Clinic, it airs, the live stream airs every week, Sunday night, 7 to 8 p.m. We usually don't go a whole hour. This is the purpose and the intent behind this is to give you one thing at a time that you can do to empower you. Peace and light, everybody.